My name is Mihir Goyal, and in this video of Spanish 101, we are going to be learning about the reflexive verbs. Reflexive verbs are simply just verbs that reflect the action upon oneself, meaning that the person performing the action is also one receiving it. If you are doing something to someone else, the action is not reflexive. Reflexive verbs can be used with all verb tenses. For example, he washes himself. We wake ourselves up. These are some reflexive verbs in English. However, he washes the car and she woke me up are not reflexive. In my opinion, the reflexive verbs are a relatively easy concept to understand compared to other verb tenses because this requires no irregular conjugation of verbs or conjugation at all of verbs and can be used across all tenses in Spanish. There is instead just a pronoun that you add to signify that action is reflexive. The pronouns go as follows: me tele, no so se. Let's get to how to conjugate. So, the first step is to identify the reflexive verb's infinitive form. For example, bañarse, to bathe oneself. Notice how all reflexive verbs end with se. Now, drop the reflexive ending, se, and conjugate the verb according to the subject. Then place the appropriate reflexive pronoun before the conjugated verb. For example, yo me baño, I bathe myself, or tú te bañas, you bathe yourself. If you're going to be using a verb before the reflexive verb, leave the AR, ER, IR ending, but replace the se at the end with the appropriate reflexive pronoun. But instead of placing it in the front, place it at the end of the verb connected. For example, I need to brush. Necesito cepillarme. I will go get dressed. Voy a vestirme. Like I said before, since the verb itself is not changing, only it's getting a reflexive pronoun, there are not any additional irregular verbs and conjugations associated with the reflexive verbs. However, the verbs that have the irregular conjugations without the reflexive pronouns will still have irregular conjugations. For example, acostar, dormir, sentir, doler, after becoming acostarse, dormirse, sentirse, and dolerse, will still have irregular conjugations. Now, there is no definite amount of reflexive verbs. In fact, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of them in Spanish. Almost every verb can be turned into a reflexive verb if you add the ending. However, these are some common ones just in alphabetical order. Now let's look at some example sentences. I put myself to sleep at 10 in the night. Yo me duermo a las 10 de la noche. You always wash yourself. Tú siempre te lavas. He got sick yesterday. Él se enfermó ayer. Notice how this one has the preterite tense. We got tired earlier. Nos cansamos más temprano. Did you all dress yourselves to leave? Todos os vestisteis para salir? The students argue among themselves. Los estudiantes se pelean. Now let's look at some of the double verb ones. I must wake up early. Debo levantarme temprano. You have to brush before sleeping. Tienes que cepillarte antes de dormir. He likes to shave in the mornings. Le gusta afeitarse por las mañanas. We will go and shower. Iremos a ducharnos. And that is it for this video on the reflexive verbs. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. Thank you.